Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where hunters new and old come to learn and find inspiration from stories of hunts gone by. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the outdoor way of life, and there is no better time to start than right now. So let's head into the great outdoors with your host, Dylan Ray.
Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, as always, presented by our good friends over at ScentLock. I've got an exciting episode today. We have just in the last, how long ago was it now, Ryan? 3 weeks? 2 weeks?
Yeah, it was, July 18th or so, I think?
Yep.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago. So 10 days ago, I guess, 9 days ago. Bear Archery released the new bow that they worked on with the hunting public, the Adapt. And I've got Aaron Warbritton of the hunting public and Ryan Schutz, product manager on the compound side of things for Bear Archery, to dive into this bow. Before we start, though, Aaron, I've been excited for you to kind of give a rundown of y'all's turkey season, how it went. Just a 30-second. We'll go 3-minute elevator talk about how your turkey season went.
Pretty good. I mean, turkey populations are down in a lot of places right now, so hunting was tough in some areas, but overall it was a pretty good spring. We kind of bounced around. We hunted some new areas. We got to go out with some of our buddies and across the country, really, and yeah, we had a good time. We wrapped it up out west and hunting Merriam's in Colorado. So always fun chasing those things around the mountains.
Do you have a total number of how many turkeys were shot?
No, I don't even have any idea. To be honest, I'd have to go back through and count them.
312.
No, nothing like that. No, we did. I'd say we probably didn't shoot as many this year as we have had in past years, but that was kind of on purpose. We're traveling and probably getting fewer tags since we got some population issues across the country, but we still did pretty good. We heard quite a few turkeys most places that we went, so can't complain about that.
What's your first upcoming fall plans?
We're going out west to deer hunt. I know that for at least a couple weeks, and then a few of us are going to be elk hunting in the middle to latter part of September.
Yeah. Gotcha.
That's not first on the list. The first on the list will be antelope hunting in Montana.
Gotcha.
I don't have a tag. Zack does, and he's planning on going out there around the 17th or 18th of August, I think.
Very cool. Ryan, what's your first upcoming hunts? What are you getting prepared for?
I'd say, deer in Nebraska, we open fairly early in September, but usually I don't get big into it until, that mid-October time frame. They'll start to move a lot more around here.
Gotcha. Very cool. I was just out, I finally got to that place, Ryan, where I'm more comfortable with my recurve than I am my compound. I've got a elk and bear hunt combo set for September. And my plan was to take the recurve for bear, just because it's in a stand over bait, and then my compound for elk. And so I went out and I was shooting my compound, and I'm like, man, I feel more comfortable at even 40 yards with my recurve than I do my compound. And so I don't know which one I'm going to end up taking yet, but it was kind of an exciting time to be more comfortable with a recurve than I am a compound.
Yeah, it's crazy when you get to that. There is something about carrying something so much lighter. People don't realize that that's one of the big things, even when we talk crossbows and stuff like that. They're like, well, you can be more accurate. And I was like, yeah, but when you're walking a couple miles with something that's 10 pounds versus 6, just depending on what we're talking about, it starts to, weigh on you, pun intended.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to encourage people, whether you're making the switch from a crossbow to a compound, or a compound to a recurve, or a recurve to a self bow, whatever that transition period you're in, I've been incredibly ticked off at times. Incredibly ticked off at times. But I just want to encourage you, when you put in months of work and shooting daily and hanging in there, you'll get to that point where it's like, okay, I'm now more comfortable with this than I was my old weapon. Because, I've been practicing daily with my recurve, and I haven't shot the compound since last deer season. So when I picked it up, it was just like, man, this is no longer like the comfort choice for me. And so just hang in there. You'll get there in due time. But we're here to talk about a new compound, which I'm excited about. Looks incredible. Haven't got to shoot it yet, but it looks phenomenal. Who wants to take the reins on the idea behind this bow?
Oh, Ryan probably should. All he did was just ask me some very basic questions, me and the guys, and we helped them, kind of give them some suggestions here and there. But Ryan is the real brains behind it.
Ryan's the brains behind everything.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. This one, well, I can kind of give the background story because, of course, the hunting public had a huge kind of influence in kind of what type of ideas we pitched back to Aaron, right, and group. So, last year, Aaron and group, they pushed all the bows, but it sure felt like the species kind of rise to the top. People would come up and see us at events and other things like that and be like, well, we want the hunting public bow. Which one's that? And we're kind of like,
yeah.
What do you mean, which one? They shoot like all of them, there's multiple, but almost every time it was the species. And a lot of it had to do with how much work Aaron and team did with how the arrows fly and the solo cam. And it just seemed like everybody wanted like that easy bow, right? So when we started to think about what could we do for the hunting public that would really seem to fit most, if not all, team members, the single cam kind of started to rise to the top. We also had some dual cam and some more aggressive cam options there that we wanted to talk about, but they like a little bit longer to axle to axle bow. So we talked about, riser options and things we could do there too. Also having a good solid wall. Like when I think of the hunting public and what kind of bow we wanted to deliver to them, it's kind of what we just started to talk about with the recurve. I wanted them to have a bow that, like, when you start to shoot it, you're like, and then you pick up a different bow, you're like, I like this bow better. Yeah. And it's one of those comfort type things. It's hard to explain. Like a lot of people like to be like, well, you always like the most expensive bow better. I'm not sure that's always the case. It just
absolutely not.
Just depends. I know I've talked to you before 2 years ago, like when we offered the legit, I turkey hunted more with the legit than I did at that point. I was working on the refine and then the redemption, which are both technically better bows spec wise than the legit. But man, when I shot the legit, my comfort level was just through the roof. So we feel like what the Adapt does is that, and some of the small things we did on that was, and we'll get more in depth, but the grip fits the bow perfectly, gives you just I would say a little more contact to the bow, but not a lot to where it would affect any type of shot placement or anything like that. It just actually just feels like the bow fits you better, in my opinion. And then with that draw stop, I like to draw fairly hard, and I also like to be a pull through shooter. So a lot of that has to do with ground blinds and then also tree stands. So then I'm more in depth to how my shot is versus where my body is, because I know I'm pulling through. I don't have to worry about any creep or anything like that. And having that draw stop on, or that solid stop on that single cam. So on the Adapbo, we offer a limb stop. So, I mean, it's as solid as it gets if you're a pull through shooter like myself. So I just feel like when guys shoot that and you start to put that total combination and how smooth that cam is, it starts to be one of those things where I just don't feel like I need any other type of bow. It's just so easy. And the other thing I'd add too, especially with the way the hunting public hunts, is, those guys are on one knee, 1 foot, sitting on a log. You guys are just as, into it, or in a tree stand, into it as can be. And a smooth draw cycle is everything, because I know I can tell you I've been in some hunting situations where I felt great, and then I go to pull a bow back and it's, it's more of an aggressive cam. And next thing you know, my foot moved when I didn't want it to, or, I mean, most of that has to do with when you're in a kneeling position. And I feel like this bow, it's probably not going to draw so smooth.
Yep. He hit on a bunch of things right there that we've discussed. I don't know, Ryan, how long has this process been going on? It's been well over a year that we've been talking back and forth about this thing.
Yeah, we tried to start developing in about this time last year, right? I know you guys were already hunting when we were trying to talk about developing it.
Yeah, and he's kind of downplaying the grip a little bit, because that's exactly what you told me when we were on the phone talking about it months ago. It was like, it's not a huge change, but it's kind of nice, and I think you guys are going to like it. So Ryan sent a grip out for us to test and put it on Greg's bow, and immediately Greg was like, yeah, this is way more comfortable than the last grip that we had. And we're like, well, we're thinking about putting this grip on the Adapt, what do you think? And everybody was pretty well unanimous in that decision. But to his point about the single cam, the draw stop, the smooth draw cycle, the axle to axle length, our whole idea behind the thing was, how do we create an extremely effective and accurate killing tool for deer hunters? Like average deer hunters. Now, obviously, you can use this thing for whatever the heck you want to hunt with it. Zack's taking it antelope hunting next month. He's been practicing in the yard at 70 and 80 yards with the thing. But we really like that smooth draw, because to your point, Ryan, we find ourselves in situations as bow hunters all the time, especially deer hunting, where you got deer within 20, 25 yards, and you've got to come to full draw really controlled and very slow, or you have to let your bow down very controlled and very slow. And that was the first thing Zack said when he picked it up, because he'd been shooting a dual cam bow for the last couple of years. He's like, holy cow, the draw cycle on this thing is so much smoother than my old bow. And he felt like he's like, this is going to give me a lot more confidence going into the fall when I'm trying to draw back on deer and shoot them. And the solo cam thing, we literally, as you guys know, we've been testing arrows for the last couple of years. I mean, from 400 grains to 800 grains. And in that process, we kind of realized that species, you could take that species out of the box and put any arrow on there, and within a few shots, you could get it tuned. And we had that experience over and over again, not just with the species, but with like the Paradox, with the Whitetail Legend, all of those solo cams in the last few years, which is why another reason why we went with the solo cam. It is a little bit slower than the dual cams. But at the end of the day, we're deer hunting, and the majority of the deer we figured it up the other day is like, I don't know how many dozen bucks in the last few years, but we figured up the average shot distance. It was like 17 yards. So we're like, man, we don't need something that's cranking 340, 350 feet per second. And this bow's at 320 IBO, I believe, which is plenty fast.
Average Pope and Young record. I'm not talking about just animals in the book. I'm talking records are killed at 24 yards. If that doesn't tell you something, then people are so obsessed and worried about speeds and shooting animals and shooting targets at 100, 120. I'm like, dude, how many world records were shot this year under 20 yards? World records. I'm not talking just big animals. I'm talking world records shot under 20 yards. But yet we're so concerned about how fast can our bow shoot? What's the drop at 100 yards? Do I have enough pin gap to get 120? Whatever. I could care less about speed. I'll just tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely in the priority list for us, but it was down the list, like the draw, the smooth draw, the accuracy of the bow, the feel of the bow, the durability of the bow, all those things. Even the axle to axle length that we went back and forth about for a while, Ryan, it was like, man, how do we, because the thing that some of us don't like about the short axle to axle is they're not as forgiving to shoot. The longer axle axles are more forgiving to shoot, but the short axle axles you can maneuver around in tight quarters, where the longer ones are more difficult. So it's like, how do we create a sort of happy medium there that satisfies both of those worlds and that fits a wide range of people? Because for our entire group, I mean, I got a wingspan on me. Mine's like a 30-inch plus draw length. And then you've got Ted and Greg that are down at 27, 28, you know, and our group kind of spans a lot of the framework of your average bow hunter, I feel like.
So before, Ryan, I want you to give me a speech on the grip. What's different about it? What makes it better? The features of it. But before that, Aaron, I've probably gotten 3 emails that mention you guys and why should I get a solo cam? Because I see the hunting public loves solo cam. Why are they better? Why are they not better? Give me your, what do you tell guys? I mean, you've already mentioned a couple of the benefits of a solo cam, but why do you guys gravitate towards the solo cam? What are your top 3 reasons?
It just tuned really easily for us. Number one,
yeah,
it's super smooth to shoot and accurate. We're not as concerned about the speed aspect, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, that's the one thing you give up with the solo cam. It's not as fast as some of the dual cams.
Yep, you do that 320. And I'm glad we're talking about the cam, because what I've already read on, with some of this launch that we've had 2 weeks of is a lot of people ask, well, if you're shooting a heavy arrow, why aren't we putting more power behind it? Which you could start to get with, we do like to do a lot of hybrid cams, and we do the 3-track cams now with the EKOs that'll give you more power, right? But everything has a give and take. And I can tell you there was a lot of conversations with me and Aaron and the whole group based on what cam to go with this. And it wasn't just easy, let's do the solo cam. They wanted a solo cam, but they wanted some uniqueness in the solo cam, like with putting this draw stop in there. And then also we tried to push the speed as much as we can. What tends to happen on solo cams, once you start to get a lot over 320, solo cams are kind of known for having cable wear. And so we wanted to, Aaron said durability so we were trying to give it the best we could with the solo cam, but without causing a lot of cable wear or string wear. When you start to get over that 320 IBO speed, you tend to eat up strings and cables on solo cam bows more than you would like a dual cam and some of the other options out there. So we tried to kind of, I feel like almost a video game. We're trying to make the best player we could. So we have like a bunch of 90% and 90% and 90%. Instead of just going all the way, we're just going to give up everything for speed. That's not what we did with this bow. We did not give up everything for speed. So we tried to make sure we had the most speed we could, but still allowing really, really good durability and then very smooth. And really what we think the hunting public wants to do is, a lot of people even tone these bows down, right? Like if I could set everybody up, I'd be like, a longer draw length, and if you can keep the bow maxed out, great. So if you're like 29-inch and you want to shoot 70 pounds, and I want you to keep those limb bolts all the way down, and whether it's 71, 72, that's where I would like you to be, but that's not exactly where people go, especially when you're trying to make sure it's a smooth draw. A lot of people tone these down to 60, 63. Everybody kind of has a preference, it feels like, with that. And solo cams perform so well with that and have little tuning adjustments at times. I mean, any bow can be, improved by good tuning by any bow shop or people that know what they're doing on tuning that. Single cam can get out of tune at times, but it's really easy to bring back into tune, where some of 3-track cams and some other bows like that, when you get out of time, you don't even realize why you're having issues until you talk to somebody that's kind of been down that road before. So really easy with that. And then Aaron hit on it a little bit, but you guys definitely have to have a following for shooting heavy arrows. So before I even called up with ideas, I was thinking, okay, what's going to shoot a 600 grain arrow best, and how do I make sure it performs? So we were thinking about heavy arrows quite a bit with this setup.
Yeah,
Now,
I shot the other day. I went out in the yard, and my whole plan was that I was going to shoot 2 different arrows this fall, and I was going to basically have to completely change the tune of my bow for both of them. I had a 550 grain arrow and a 700 grain arrow.
Yeah,
That
that's
thing
a heavy arrow.
Yeah, and it's probably just ridiculously too much. But regardless, I've been shooting it good, and I don't really care. I don't care if the thing is 400 grains or 900 grains. If I'm hitting where I'm aiming, that's like the number one thing. That's what trumps everything. And if I've got a good broadhead on there and a heavier arrow, I might be able to deal with bone a little bit better than some of the lighter ones. But that's really a far second. Like the accuracy is the major deal. So I shot a 550 grain arrow and a 700 grain arrow out of the same bow, the same exact setup. And they both are flying like darts. The 550 grain arrow just doesn't drop as much at distance. But I really didn't like the bow shot them both really well. And I haven't touched it as far as the tune or anything, which is what we've seen in the last few years with these solo cams from Bear. Like they just will shoot anything. And that's a major reason why we went with it. And the ability to draw that thing smooth and hold it and have control of it, that's so important in a hunting situation, because that's where our mind goes to with all this stuff. I'm not worried about shooting 3D targets. I'm not worried about shooting, at the range. I want to have a bow that is going to be, in our minds, perfect for the hunting situation. That's what we want. And most of our, like we said, we've already touched on, most of our shots are inside of 30 yards.
Yeah.
So
now let me just, we got to back up here, because we're talking about speed. This bow's slow. We don't care about speed. This bow
320 is really not that slow.
320
is shooting 320 feet per second.
No, you can't tell a huge difference between it and a bow that's shooting 330 feet per second.
No.
You're really,
Listen,
splitting hairs.
I got news for you. If you were to tell my dad 30 years ago, dude, we're going to get you a bow that shoots 320 feet per second, he would have laughed and fallen off his chair and said, yeah, okay. When I see it, I'll believe it. I say all that. There are faster bows out there. I know that. The technology today is insane. But 320 is far sufficient enough to shoot anything you want to shoot. Just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, there are guys who shoot bows much slower, and 20 years ago, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have dreamed of having a bow that fast, much less a single cam that fast. So the bow is going to perform. I've said this from the beginning, I love a 32-inch axle to axle. That's my absolute favorite axle to axle you could ever get on a bow. So I fully believe this bow is going to shoot great. Aaron,
Brian, I haven't even told you this yet, but all of us were in the yard the other day with our dabs, and we were shooting the video that's going to go on our channel here in the next couple of days, where we basically discuss the bow and like that, the whole story behind it. And I literally told Greg, it's like, I've got to be careful because I sound like a salesman in this video, because I seriously love this thing. Like it's one of my favorite bows that I've shot in the last decade. Zack immediately picked it up and started shooting it. And he's like, dude, this thing is freaking awesome. And across the board, everybody in our crew absolutely loves it. And that's what I told Greg. It's like, people are going to think we're saying that just because it has our name on it. It's like, no, it really is like our favorite bow that we've shot in a long time.
Well, I love that you bring it up, because when we were making this bow or developing it, the talk was, okay, we'll make this, but you guys don't all have to shoot it, right? We're still Bear on our side. We're like, we have some other new bows in the works. You're like, you guys are going to shoot those too, right? And you can. And next thing you know, there's a phone call saying all these guys just kind of really just want to stay with the adapt now. We're like, they can shoot whatever they want. But I mean, it went from, can we still shoot the other line, to, man, do we love this one, which is great.
Yeah, we really
phenomenal.
love this one. Greg's still going to shoot his refine and the adapt. He's got them both set up for different stuff. And I think Ted's going to shoot he's got his species EV and his adapt that he's working with. But I was going to set up 2 different bows, but I think I'm just going to use this adapt because it shoots both arrows that I'm wanting to shoot so well that I don't want to put it down. I mean, I'm really feel like I'm more accurate with it than I have been in some time. And as soon as I picked it up, that bow, the Paradox and the Whitetail Legend in the last couple years, like as soon as I took them out of the box, it was immediately like, man, got the arrows tuned, flying great, and sighted in. And I think that's why a lot of people like them, because they're affordable. They can get accurate results fairly easily and quickly with it, with a variety of different arrows. And that, at the end of the day, I mean, we already said 320 feet per second is plenty fast enough for killing whitetail deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it makes the whole package very shootable. Like, we've been on speed, but I mean, the bow is just under 4 pounds. I mean, it's a 6.5-inch brace height. So we're kind of talking about standards. I mean, a lot of bows are 6 inches, and I have a lot of bows in my lineup that are that type of brace heights, but this one's a little bit longer, still getting that speed. And it does feel like the sweet spot right now is kind of like a 6.5 brace height, 32-inch axle to axle. Yeah. Everybody it almost seems like more people have axle to axle opinions than speed opinions lately, which is fine, as people have started to shoot different ways with like tree saddles and so much ground blinds. That axle to axle has just became more and more important to people.
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you when the speed game changed for me. First off, I'm going to give you guys your next question so you can be thinking about it. Aaron, when you pick up a bow, not just this bow, when you pick up a bow, what are you looking for? And then Ryan, when you go to create a new bow, what are the first things you consider when you're creating a new bow? But I'll tell you when the speed game changed for me. I don't know. It was probably the better part of 6 years ago. I bought a new bow, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go with 60 pounds. Why not? Like, it doesn't, 70 pounds, who cares? I'm like, people kill deer with 40-pound recurves all the time. My wife's shooting 42 pounds with her compound and kills deer all the time. So why not shoot 60? And I thought, man, I'm going to lose so much speed. And that was back when really the speed game was like on the rave. And I shot that bow even out to 100 yards. I shot that bow better than any bow I've ever shot. And I'm like, this is the slowest bow I've ever shot, but yet I shoot it better than any bow I've ever shot. And a lot can go into that. It was a 32-inch axle to axle, 7-inch brace height. A lot can go into that. But I just realized, man, we're so worried about speed so we can shoot longer distances, but I shoot this bow that I'm shooting really slow and at 60 pounds better than any bow I've ever shot. And so from then on, I just never cared about speed. I never shoot my bows through a chrono. Don't really care how fast they're shooting. I just, like Aaron said, I mean, I want to be able to hit a dot and kill an animal at different ranges. And if I can do that, who cares how fast the arrow's flying? Aaron, what do you look for in a bow when you pick it up?
A number of different things, but I'd say just the overall feel of it is the most important. Like how comfortable it is to shoot, how forgiving it is. I don't want there to be a bunch of hand shock. I don't want it to sound like a gun going off, but I just say the overall feel of the bow. Cause that's why I said Ryan's kind of, he needs a huge pat on the back for that grip, because the grip is part of that equation, right?
Yeah.
And that's the first thing we noticed, all of us, as soon as we started shooting this thing. I was like, man, this thing just feels very comfortable to shoot.
So you asked me the grip question too, Dylan. I didn't really give you a good answer.
We never got to that.
I like to talk about cams. You know how I feel about cams. So,
yeah.
But you asked about the grip first. So I actually have like the prototype that started that. But really what we did with the grip was so we took our high-end grip that we started to do on the Refine this year, which was our Grizz grip. So we took the grip, geometry that we use on our most expensive, our flagship bow. And then we were like, okay, how do we put that grip on these other risers, and still make it very comfortable, right? So the kind of the palm sweat. So we get so into grips. We're looking at your palm swell. We have some great engineers that, helped with the palm swell, but then we widened it just a touch. That's where I don't want to get down like the speed talk where it sounds bad. Like when you say wide and bigger on grips, most archers cringe because the trend is, oh, you want it as small as possible. We want it to feel comfortable. So we wanted it as small as possible with a comfort feel. So we really played with that type of fit, so it fits just perfect right here in your hand. We really wanted to go with that curved part of your hand. And then we've added this soft touch coating to it, which is actually one of the first samples that we sent to Aaron and team, just to be like, take this on hunts, try to rub this off, keep it in your truck. Like we tried everything. We went to like
Aaron sat there for 7 hours just going like this.
We put sandpaper on it. We put it in the freezer, but we're like, we want real world stuff too. Like, the only the way the hunting public can, like, put it on the ground and leave it there for a while and see what happens, right? So we feel so great about that. One of the reasons we wanted that was, of course, when you're hunting and you hold that bow for so long, especially like elk hunting, you're gonna sweat lots of times early elk season. Just depends on where you're at and what's happening, right? But I know most of my early elk hunts, there's some sweating involved. But I didn't want anybody's hand to lots of times when you start to sweat, your hand will move up kind of into the neck, and we didn't want that. That's why there's that palm swell. So if you grip it at all, it should start to grab it a little bit with some friction. So might not work great for everybody, but we feel like we've definitely got the masses covered with that on the grip. But that kind of goes into your other question on what are the first things you think about on bow development, which we don't have enough time for me to go over all the different things I think about when we're talking about bow development, because it depends on, what price point am I working on, all the other things. On this one, though, we really wanted it to be feel. And to me, when you're thinking about feel, the first thing most people touch on the bow is the grip. So that's going to give them, lots of times that's the perception. I hate this bow or I like this bow is the grip. And then
even before they shoot it.
Yes, even before they shoot it. And then we felt like the solo cam was important because, boy, it's hard to pull back a solo cam and be like, oh, that felt awful. Like they don't really feel that way. I mean, they're pretty much, most solo cams are going to be smooth.
Yeah. No. I remember watching this change take place, and I was working at a bow shop really when it was in the big swing of changing from solo cams to everybody trying to do cam and a half and dual cams, and I'm like, why? Like, and it goes back to speed. That was everything everybody cared about, was how fast can I get my bow to shoot. I'm going to shoot a 200 grain arrow and I'm going to get, I'm like, for real? Like, why? And so I'm excited to kind of see this resurgence from Bear, and largely due to because the hunting public, but people falling back in love with the shootability and smoothness of a single cam bow.
Yeah, we really like them a lot. I mean, and that's the good thing with Bear. They have something for everybody throughout the whole line, just depending on what you're looking for. But at the end of the day, bow hunting whitetails in large parts a close range game. It's not. That is not the always or never answer. Obviously, yeah. I mean, there's obviously exceptions to that in some places, but in large part, that's where that's what bow hunting whitetails is it's a 20-yard shot a lot of times. I mean, occasionally you get out there further than that, and that's why all these other factors were higher on the priority list for us. At the end of the day, I told Ryan several times on phone calls, like, Ryan, we're just average dudes. We don't know what any of this technical stuff means.
Ryan.
We just know how to, yes, we just know how to pick the bow up and shoot it, probably not the right way. Not I don't mean that badly. I mean, like, we don't have perfect form. When a buck comes by us, our heart's beating 1,000,000 miles an hour, and some things that we practice might go out the window. So is there a bow that we can build that is tough as nails, that we can drag through, the brush and beat the crap out of, that's accurate and easy to tune, that feels great to shoot? And that's where then the wheels just start turning for him after that, and we end up with this thing. And like, it's exactly what we had in mind when we started down this road. And I think, I think the average bow hunter that is looking for a mid-price point bow that is going to kill the heck out of deer, this is going to be a great option for them.
And I would
That's
add,
all we need.
A lot of a draw length adjustment, which we haven't talked too much about that, Dylan, but it goes from 24 to 31 inches. So we wanted to try to make sure that we could fit everybody. So, and you can get limbs 45 to 60 pounds or 55 to 70, which are pretty standard for bear. But I mean, you could get down into that 45 and, shorter draw length, like 24 and 25, and really hit everybody.
Here's my tip.
Yeah, we talked a lot about the draw length last summer, and that's a big deal, because we're all, like I mentioned earlier, all of us in our group are all shooting something different as far as draw length goes, and we all fall within that range.
Here's my tip, and then we'll dive into the accessory package that the bow was pieced together with. But here's my tip: if you want to shoot 60 pounds, and Ryan alluded to it, you want to shoot a bow. A bow is going to shoot best at its maxed out potential. Is that what you would say?
Yeah.
It's peak. It's peak weight. So if you want to shoot 60 pounds, get the bow that maxes out at 60 pounds. Don't get a 70-pound bow and crank it back a little bit. That bow will shoot better if you do that. So that's just a quick tip. Before we dive into the setup of that, let me give a quick shout out to my boys over at Arrow Junkie. I fell in love with those guys because I'm an arrow tinkerer, much like the hunting public. I like playing with arrows. I like playing with different fletching configurations, different weights in the outserts and the broadheads. I like playing with that different types of stuff. It's what I do for fun. Some people read books at night. I sharpen broadheads at night. That's what I like to do. Arrow Junkie gives you all of the tools you need to build your own arrows, from jigs and planers to vanes, wraps, glues, everything. So I would highly recommend you to go check out Arrow Junkie. They have a large selection of broadheads. They have some incredibly cool merchandise. So I would highly recommend you check out arrowjunkie.com. And they do a monthly giveaway where you can win your own arrow building stuff. So as far as accessories go, why did you choose the accessories you chose, Aaron?
I've been shooting on hot wire sight now for the last couple years, and really like it a lot. It's built it's built solid. And that's one of the main things, is I want a really solid housing around the pins, because we're dragging it through brush all the time. And I want the pins to be solid and durable as well. And the hot wire check both those boxes. For whitetail hunting, I'm only using the top pin. I'm occasionally using the second pin if I have to take a shot that's closer to 30 yards. And then I like having that floater pin down below it that I can practice with in the yard, that I can shoot 40, 50, 60 yards with if I want to dial it down there. It's just very versatile sight. So that's the one I've shot for several years now. I actually have two of them right now, and love those. I recently, I've got the new quiver on there, and I put the kit on it to make it, what is it?
2-piece.
The 2-piece quiver that attaches permanently to the bow. Because that's one thing we've started doing more and more in the last few years, is we don't take our quivers off as much as we used to. If you're a tree stand hunter primarily, and you get up there and you've got a place to hang it up, that's what I used to do anyways. I'd detach the quiver and I'd hang it up, and I would mainly practice with no quiver on. But more and more, the more elk hunting we've done in the last few years, and the more just deer hunting on the ground where we're moving around, still hunting, the more we find ourselves leaving the quivers on. So I just changed that to a 2-piece the other day.
Might I just say too, if you're using a good quiver, like the Versalite, where you can adjust how far close it is, the tilt. If you're using a good quiver, that quiver can act to help you balance your bow. Used to, quivers were big and obnoxious and you couldn't get them close to your riser. And that's why we took them off, because it added so much extra weight and cant on that side of the bow. But if you're shooting a good quiver, it'll actually help you balance your bow rather than throw your bow out of balance. So something to think about there.
Yeah, Greg just put that Hitman stabilizer on his that has got that counterbalancing stabilizer.
Yeah.
And he loves that thing. So now he's shooting with his quiver on with that Hitman.
So
Yeah.
I like a 2-piece. I do have some 1-pieces like what we were just talking about, to where I can adjust it so close to the rest. But kind of like Greg, I like to have, when I find out the right balance of my bow for the offset, I have the quiver on there. And the way I mostly practice is there's always 4 arrows in my quiver at all times. And I'm always shooting the 5th arrow. That way that bow always feels the same weight. Maybe overkill on perfect practice makes perfect, but that's the way I like to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've been going to 3 arrows recently when I'm packing 700 grainers around.
That's not a bad idea.
But yeah, I like that. That stabilizer a lot is really handy for that. And then we use a variety of stabilizers from up and down the Bear line across the board. But most of us are shooting Sync MD rests right now. And I think that's it on the accessory side.
I gotta ask you, with your hunting style and with your guys' mentality towards everything else, don't take this negatively, and your mentality towards everything else, I would think, if you didn't tell me what rest you shot, I would think dudes are whisker biscuit guys. Just because
we love those too.
Really? So why do you choose the Sync over a whisker biscuit? Just curious.
We shoot the Sync. A lot of us do because of the heavier arrows. The
would
biscuits
fall through the whisker. The whiskers?
Yeah, once you get up to those ridiculous 700 grains, which is not what your average guys that are starting to go heavier now are ending up around 550 grains.
Yeah.
And some of them are creeping upwards of 600, depending on how long their draw lengths are. But we like experimenting, so we wanted those drop
like
weights.
We like shooting tree trunks out of our bows.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we love the whisker biscuits too. Like several of the package bows, a few years ago, the species package bows that came with the whisker biscuit, we would take those things literally right out of the package and go tune them in 1 or 2 shots, and then the boys would shoot that rest on there all year and had great luck. It's an awesome hunting rest.
Yeah, I've fallen in love with it, man. I shot a fall away for 9 years, fell into the whole misconception of you got to shoot a drop away. And it was David Blanton one year said, I'll tell you what, you shoot a whisker biscuit for 1 year. And if you don't love it, I'll buy you back another drop away. And I was like, okay, deal. And so I shot a whisker biscuit probably 4 years ago, and just never looked back. I love it. I took it into a guy and handed him my bow, and he was going to shoot it through paper, and we were going to tune it up. And he said, dude, these 4 fletches will never tune out of this whisker biscuit. And I'm like, just shoot it. And he comes back. He's like, that was a bullet hole. I'm like, all right, thank you, sir. And walked out happy. Ryan, I was at a shoot this weekend. I was at a mountain archery fest, and some people ran over and they're like, Dylan, we need your help. We need your help. I'm like, what? And they're like, the guys at Trophy Ridge, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we need to change the name of whisker biscuit because that doesn't make any sense. There's no hole in a biscuit. He's like, we need to change it to a whisker bagel. And I'm like, well, hey, I'll see if we can't get that pushed through there for you. They're like, it just makes way more sense. It's got an actual hole in it. They're like, whisker donut, whisker bagel, something that has a hole in it. And I'm like, well, you're not wrong. So we got to push that through the chain.
Yeah. It's not like a lot of people know whisker biscuit by name or anything, right? We always call it the Kleenex of rest nowadays. but
it'll catch on though.
it would catch on. I think it would have caught on just as quick as the biscuit did. Bagel, I actually like a little better.
Now this bow does come with the free Onyx maps. So that's another benefit of this. Ryan, what is not the science, but how does that the new stabilizer, the shock stop, how does it perform? I don't want to say so much better, but it seems to just absorb so much more vibration. I was actually in the booth at ATA when Aaron and his posse, that's what I'm just going to call you guys, Aaron and the posse, when the hunting public crew rolled up and they began to give the demonstration of the shock stop, and they did the whole hit the bow test, and see how much vibration's on it, then put the stabilizer on, hit it again. And it really it was like, holy crap, this takes out a lot of vibration. So why does that stabilizer seem to suck up so much more vibration than some other stabilizers?
So I think a misconception on stabilizers is that they take out a lot of vibration. That used to be the thing a while ago, and then they quickly more became, a way to counterbalance your bow. Some people like a hard rock forward. Some people like it almost to be dead or very, very little. So I would say when the hunting market became more target oriented, which is probably about 10 years or so now, where we all started to shoot longer and things like that. And I'm definitely part of that as well, with offsets and things like that. You used to not see that in the hunting world as much. But then you saw that mostly, then it just became more like carbon rods and things like that with weights on them. More the shock stopper is not that. So, I mean, that stabilizer is meant to take vibration out of bows. I mean, so there's some very, not trying to give away too much of our great technology, but there is technology working inside that stabilizer to take out vibration. And what you said, like what we showed at ATA is nuts. We would even put our Hitman, which we love. I shoot a Hitman mostly on all my bows, which is our better stabilizer. And it takes some vibration out. It definitely helps stabilize the shot, and you can, customize your weight. But when you take that off a bow and put the shock stopper on there, it's crazy how much more it takes out instantly. And I like that we're talking about this too, because vibration has became more of a bigger thing now, and to make sure that it's out of, get as much as you can out of bows. And there was a time back when we were talking about speed, a lot of people didn't care about if there's vibration in the bow, they just wanted speed. But definitely things have shifted now to where we're trying to make them have no vibration or as little as possible.
Right. Before we go, both of you have been on the show before. Fred Bear was big on his field notes. I ask every guest, what's one field note you'd like to share with us? One tip, trick, something that I can take and make myself a better hunter with. Aaron, I'm going to tell you what you have to give, if that's okay.
Okay.
Something along the lines of why heavier arrows, or what to look for in a heavier arrow, or just some tip you found along the way about shooting heavier arrows.
The heavier arrows, I feel like, are a combination of a heavier arrow with a solid one piece cut on contact broadhead.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, if in our hunting situations, we find ourselves getting a lot of close range opportunities at deer through tight quarters, through tight windows. A lot of there's not a high odds chance on most of the public land that we hunt across the country that we're going to get like a 40 or 50 yard shot at a mature buck, because we're usually not hunting them in a setting like that. We're usually in thick stuff where you can see bits and pieces of the animal as they're coming in, and that enables us to get extremely close. But it also puts us, shooting through these tight little windows.
Yeah.
Where, occasionally we've had those issues over the years where you impact heavy bone. Now, there's a big difference in the bone density of a 1.5, 2.5-year-old buck or doe versus a 5.5-year-old buck, especially in the Midwest. They're just built much, much stronger. And once you go up in arrow weight, forward to center, and with a very, very durable cut on contact broadhead, specifically a single bevel broadhead that's designed to split bone, you kind of marry all those things together and you have a tool that can help
a meat
you.
missile.
Well, it's more like a bone missile. It's that's what it's designed to do. So I killed a buck a couple of years ago and I hit him right in the ball and socket joint, right where the humerus connects to the scapula at the bottom. And I think it is the heaviest bone in the front of that buck.
It is where we design and work on broadheads. That's the part you worry about the most. That's a fail or a not fail right there.
Yep. And we need more data on this because Ashby did all these studies years ago on hundreds and hundreds of animals, and he's got all this great information. But we need modern day data today on what is the heavy bone threshold of a modern compound bow and arrow. We got to quit testing for penetration and targets and things like that, because that's not what we're shooting at when we're hunting stuff. Yeah. You've got to shoot at essentially live animals with heavy bones that are moving. So your impact point is changing. There is energy associated with the movement of the animal that you are not getting anywhere in a target. Right. So I guess this is my long-winded way of saying we like the heavier arrows with the single bevel cut on contact heads because they are better equipped tools to going through heavy bone in the event that we encounter heavy bone. Now, if you're hunting in a more controlled setting where you can absolutely wait for that perfect 20-yard broadside or slightly quartering away shot where you can slide it right through the ribs, then it's not as big of an issue. But when we're in thick brush like that, we're trying to wait for those shots and get those. But as you guys know, when you're hunting, things happen extremely fast. When a big buck comes in, a lot of people say, that they're able to make these 100% perfect decisions every single time. And I just don't think that's realistic for 99% of the hunters that are out there. Like, you can tell yourself all that you want. You can shoot a bag in your yard as many times as you want, and it will not mentally prepare you for a giant 5-year-old buck. It's 15 yards.
Right.
Like your mind is not in the same place. Your heart rate is not at the same place. It is just a completely different situation. So all I'm saying with that is that's why we choose those arrows, is because we feel like it gives us a little bit more margin for error in the event that we do hit a heavy bone in the animal.
That's what I was going to say. Even if you are shooting deer on your back 40 and you've got lanes cut every direction and you know right where the deer's coming, you're going to shoot them at 20 yards quartering away. Why not have that margin of error? Why not, if the deer turns a little bit and you hit something you didn't?
Well, there's all kinds of ways you can go about it, honestly. I mean, and I'm not sitting here trying to say that a 450 grain arrow with mechanical won't kill a whitetail, because we've killed dozens of them with them. They work awesome. That is not the tool for cutting the humerus bone off of a deer, off of a mature buck. That's not the tool. The tool that we know right now that works to some degree is a single bevel head with a heavier arrow that has got higher momentum. But like I said, I really want, because I talked about this with Greg the other night while we were shooting the adapts in the yard. It's like, man, I really wish that somebody would do more studies on live animals, like Ashby did years ago with modern day stuff. And then we could really see, down to the details that he brought us, because back from his data, 650 grains was the heavy bone threshold. It was like, once you got upwards of 650, sort of, some of them would go through heavy bones and some of them would not. But once he eclipsed 650, it was like, boom, every time they're breaking them. And I don't know what that heavy bone threshold is with a modern day compound and modern arrow setups, because we have not tested it at length. We've shot all kinds of other things like 2x4s and bricks and all kinds of stuff, but we really need to test it on live animals to see what that is, and more data that we'll get over time. I mean, my arrow setup worked great on that buck a couple years ago. It did exactly what it was designed to do, but we need that scenario to play out another 150 times, so that we can draw some more significant conclusions about it.
Sounds like you better keep hunting a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't mean to hit him there. Like you don't purposely hit him right in the ball and socket joint, right? Like that's not where you're aiming. You're trying to hit him behind that, but I hit a tiny twig that I didn't see in between me and the deer, and it redirected the arrow.
That's another reason to shoot a heavy arrow, and a fixed blade, is because it won't get as messed up by little brush, little twigs, shooting through grass, so on and so forth.
There's pros and cons to both of them. There definitely is, and it totally depends on what you're comfortable with, what you got confidence in your hunting situation that you're in.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't exchange anything for confidence. You've got to have confidence in your setup. You've got to believe in what you shoot. You've got to believe. Somebody asked me, Dylan, what's your furthest shot you'll take at an animal? And I said, the furthest shot I'll take at an animal is when I look at an animal and say, I can kill that thing. Then I'll shoot it. And if I look at an animal and say, I don't know, then I'm not shooting it.
Sure.
And that changes from time to time. There's been times where I didn't feel good shooting an animal at 13 yards. I mean, it was alert. There was a small window. There was stuff between us. And I'm like, I just can't make that shot. And there's been times where at 40 yards, I'm like, dude, I could drop him right now. And I shoot. So that shot distance for me changes all the time. You have to know, what am I comfortable with? What can I make work in the field for me? And that's what you need to shoot. So what do you got for us, Ryan?
I have something that's right for you. So a couple of years ago, I'm a big turkey hunter. So I was turkey hunting, but I'd already shot one with a compound bow and decided I was going to switch to recurve. So a little bit like what you are now. Like I was confident enough. I was like, well, the recurve's working good for me. I'm going to use it. And so in real life, so of course I was shooting the recurve like everybody else practicing. I was shooting sitting down a lot, but not with the blind around me in practice. And lots of times I do. But what really got me different using a recurve now, I like our Kodiak, which is a little bit longer recurve. Everybody has their favorite. Obviously, our takedown is most people's favorite, but Kodiak's my favorite. So everybody has their own. The awareness of how much bigger that bow is than my normal. I tend to like a 30-inch compound axle to axle. Everybody's different. I have a smaller draw, so 30 inches with my 26.5-inch draw fits me really well. So that tends to be my go-to bow. And sometimes I'll go longer, 32, something like that, but I never had anything like this recurve. So I can remember the first turkeys I drew up on, it still ended up working out, but the tip of that touched the top of the blind, which of course kind of got me, like what Aaron was saying, it knocked me off my game a little bit. Like I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess this up. I got lucky and it didn't. They were coming in hot for the decoy anyway, but I had to tilt that bow a little bit more than anticipated to make it all happen. And that part all worked out, but I wish I'd have practiced a little bit more and got used to how I was going to have to adjust the bow versus what my compound was. So even when I knew I was shooting well enough, I wasn't hunting with it a lot, which just takes some time. So kind of my tale from the field. I learned a little bit that day.
The first time I shot my recurve out of a blind, I was hunting javelinas in South Texas, and my buddy had literally taken this blind out of the box and set it up, and he was hunting somewhere else, and I had decided to sit in that blind that he had literally just pulled out of the box, brand new, and set up, and and I had a cameraman, and I shoot, and the top limb zips through the top of that blind and makes a stinking rip I don't know, 9 inches long, and the camera guy goes, "What are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna go get a piece of black duct tape. I'm gonna put it over that, and you're not gonna say a word." And it wasn't until like 2.5 years later, he texts like the whole group that was there, and he's like, "What happened to this blind, dude? I just took it." He's like, "There's a rip." I'm like, "Dude, I have no idea, man. Cactuses in Texas. Who knows, dude? So something ripped it." And so I still, hopefully doesn't listen to this because I still to this day got away with it, but we'll see. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Where can they get more information on this bow, Ryan?
So we have it up on our site. So beararchery.com should give you everything you need to know about the bow, and the bow only version is already out live and is at many bear dealers. So we're super excited about that. And then Aaron and the whole team is supporting us a ton too. So but Aaron has some good information on their site about the bow as well. You can cover that.
Yeah, we're going to be dropping a video on YouTube here in the next day or two that is going to be all about the Adapt. It's going to be, what our feelings are on it out of the box, what we think, the pricing, where it's going to be available. We talk about all that stuff. And then we link to everything. I think we've got links to like the specific dealers that Alex sent me where you can find the bow. And then later this fall, it'll be available in Bass Pro Cabela's as well. So
if you're not subscribed to the Hunting Public on YouTube, you've got a problem. No, I'm just kidding. But if you're not subscribed, go check it out because here in the next day or two, you'll get everything you need to know about this bow. A look at it, their thoughts on it. So go check that out. Before we go, I do have
you're gonna get the redneck's point of view on it.
Yes, sir. I do have to give a shout out to our friends over at Three Rivers Archery, your one-stop shop for all things traditional. They have been long supporters of Bear Archery, good friends of Bear Archery. They have a ton of Bear Archery memorabilia, swag, whatever you want to call it. I just ordered a couple signs for my house that you can't get anywhere else that are some vintage Bear Archery signs. They carry the Bear Archery recurves. They carry everything you need to get started in traditional archery or for the most advanced traditional archers. So go check out our good friends over at Three Rivers Archery. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening. Guys, make sure and check out the Adapt. Make sure and tune into the Hunting Public on YouTube to catch that video dropping in the next couple days. Thanks for listening. You guys have a great week.